The idea of Jesus having been married may shock many, but have we truly understood his life correctly? We are taught that Jesus was celibate, fully devoted to his mission of spreading the gospel, but what if that is not the truth? There have been theories suggesting that he may have actually been married, even had children. Could this secret change everything we thought we knew about Christianity? Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we will explore a question that has baffled scholars and historians for thousands of years. Did Jesus really marry? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss these fascinating discoveries. The idea of Jesus marrying has been a deeply controversial topic throughout Christian history, particularly when considering its relationship with traditional doctrine. Traditionally, Jesus is seen as a celibate, pure figure, unbound by earthly emotions or desires. However, the question arises, if this is not true, could his marriage change the way we understand him and Christianity? This perspective not only constructs his image as a perfect being, but also strengthens belief in his divine nature and his extraordinary perfection in the mission of saving humanity. In fact, the idea of Jesus' celibacy was officially confirmed in the 4th century, when the Church faced pagan religions promoting sexual rituals as part of worship. At that time, in order to protect doctrine and highlight the differences between Christianity and these beliefs, the Church presented an image of Jesus as completely celibate. However, in the early Christian communities, this concept was not emphasized in such a way, and it may have been added to Jesus' story to elevate him to a higher, more spiritual status. This is something that many scholars and modern archaeological studies have pointed out. In 2012, a shocking discovery was announced. A Coptic papyrus fragment, no larger than a credit card, containing a statement that made the world ponder. Jesus said to them, "My wife." This papyrus fragment dates back to the 4th century and is believed to be part of an ancient Coptic text. What makes it remarkable is that this sentence contradicts the image of Jesus as celibate. This papyrus was first introduced by Karen L. King, a professor of theology at Harvard Divinity School, who led the research into its authenticity. Since then, this papyrus has sparked a major debate about the truth behind the possibility that Jesus may have been married. The authenticity of the papyrus has been verified through multiple independent assessments, including evaluations from leading experts in the field. According to King and other experts, the writing style and materials used in this papyrus align with ancient Coptic texts, suggesting it could be a genuine work from that era. However, the question of whether this is a forgery still remains. Nonetheless, one thing that cannot be denied is that this discovery has revived discussions about one of the greatest mysteries in Christian history. Did Jesus really marry? One of the factors further supporting this hypothesis is other documents like the Gospel of Mary, an ancient text discovered in the late 19th century. This Gospel, written in Coptic and dating from the 2nd century, describes a dialogue between Mary Magdalene and the disciples, in which Mary says that Jesus married her and asserts that she had a spiritual role equal to his. Some scholars believe this text could be strong evidence of a close relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, though many remain skeptical about its authenticity. Another piece of evidence that may support this hypothesis comes from the Gospel of Philip, discovered in the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt in 1945. This text is not a gospel in the traditional sense, but a collection of teachings and sayings of Jesus and his disciples. In it, Mary Magdalene is referred to as Jesus' companion, the one he loved more than all the other disciples. While it doesn't explicitly mention a marriage, the special closeness between Jesus and Mary leads some to believe they may have been married. However, it is important to remember that in the cultural and religious context of that time, it was not unusual for religious leaders to marry. In fact, in Judaism, it was a religious requirement for a rabbi to marry, and most men of Jesus' age were already married. Therefore, it would not be surprising if Jesus followed this convention as well. However, the Gospels that we are familiar with today do not mention his marriage, which leads us to ponder why the authors of these texts chose not to address Jesus' personal life, possibly because they wanted to focus on his spiritual message and teachings. Although these clues are not enough to definitively confirm that Jesus was married, they provide valuable insights into the mysteries that still surround his life. The question of whether Jesus had a wife and children is not just a historical debate, but also opens up new discoveries about how we understand him and the message he left for humanity. Each new piece of evidence, each discovery, makes us reconsider one of the greatest figures in human history. According to the text Acts of Philip, written in the 4th century, Jesus and Mary Magdalene were indeed married in a ceremony witnessed by many of his disciples. This text describes their wedding in detail, including the presence of guests, the exchange of vows, and a celebratory feast afterward. However, the strange details in the description of this wedding have led many to ponder. One of the unique aspects is that the text describes Jesus and Mary entering the bridal chamber unclothed, emanating a light from their bodies. This not only sets their wedding apart from ordinary ones, but also suggests that it was not just a physical union, but a spiritual and divine union. Some scholars argue that the description in Acts of Philip should not be taken literally, but rather symbolically, representing the soul union between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, rather than a physical relationship. They suggest that this is a way of expressing the deep spiritual union between the two, reflecting the noble and pure nature of their relationship. However, some scholars argue that this description actually refers to a real wedding, taking place in the earthly realm, with Jesus and Mary Magdalene as the central figures in a fully tangible marriage ceremony. This broadens the debate over the authenticity of this text. Like many other ancient manuscripts, the true meaning of Acts of Philip remains an unanswered question. Perhaps the details are not an accurate historical record, but a symbolic interpretation, emphasizing the sacred and unique relationship between Jesus and Mary. However, regardless, the evidence from Acts of Philip continues to offer a fresh perspective on the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, suggesting that they may have had a much closer connection than what we are told in the traditional Gospels. Especially within the context of ancient Jewish culture, where rabbis were expected to marry, it would not be surprising if Jesus adhered to this standard. In fact, throughout history, religious leaders such as rabbis were expected to marry to uphold family values and honor religious rituals. Therefore, the idea of Jesus marrying a significant woman like Mary Magdalene is not unexpected. It could be part of a larger message he intended to convey. Moreover, the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene is mentioned in other texts, such as the Gospel of Mary, a work discovered at the end of the 19th century. This text offers a different perspective on their relationship, when Mary reveals that she and Jesus shared a profound equal spiritual connection. These records highlight their special closeness, making the question of whether they were truly married increasingly complex. Sure, this evidence unveils an untold story of the lives of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, challenging long-held assumptions about him and his relationship with the disciples. The question of whether Jesus married not only changes how we view him as a human, but may also illuminate aspects of Christian doctrine we have yet to understand. While we may never know the exact answer, these discoveries help broaden our understanding of one of the greatest figures in human history. So what should we make of all this evidence? Could it be that Jesus truly married despite what the Bible says about him? This is undoubtedly a contentious question, with compelling arguments on both sides. One of the main reasons opponents of the hypothesis that Jesus married cite is the silence in the Bible regarding his wife and children. If Jesus had married, why is there no mention of his family in the Gospels we have today? This leads skeptics to argue that this hypothesis is merely a modern invention, inspired by contemporary cultural works like Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, and has not been substantiated by solid historical evidence. However, there are counter-arguments to these claims. Some scholars suggest that the Bible may have intentionally omitted or excluded any mention of Jesus' wife and children because it did not align with the spiritual purpose of the Gospels. The focus on Jesus' religious life may have led the Gospel authors to decide not to include personal details about his family. Additionally, some scholars argue that the authors of the Gospels may have deemed it unnecessary to highlight Jesus' family life, as they wanted to focus on his mission of salvation and his teachings. However, we cannot easily dismiss the fact that some other ancient texts, although lesser known and disputed in terms of authenticity, offer strong suggestions about Jesus' relationship with Mary Magdalene, which may have been a marital one. For example, the Gospel of Philip, an ancient Gnostic text, describes Mary Magdalene as Jesus' companion, the one he loved more than all the other disciples. In this text, Mary is not only considered an important disciple, but also plays a central role in Jesus' life. This description has raised doubts that Mary and Jesus may have had a relationship that was more than just friendship. Calling Mary the companion could be seen as a subtle reference to a close and intimate relationship, potentially even a marital one, something not mentioned in the canonical Gospels. While some ancient texts like the Gospel of Philip may spark debates over their authenticity, these writings open the possibility that Jesus may have had a family life that we are unaware of. This challenges traditional assumptions of him as a figure entirely detached from personal life, and raises the question of whether these details might have been erased or overlooked during the compilation of the Gospels we have today. However, we must also consider that there is no direct evidence confirming that Jesus was married in the canonical Gospels. The appearance of texts like the Gospel of Philip and the Coptic papyrus fragments are merely suggestions, not irrefutable proof. Therefore, while we may accept that these hypotheses are worthy of study, drawing a definitive conclusion about Jesus' personal life remains something that cannot yet be confirmed. It is important to continue researching, expanding our understanding, and keeping an open mind to new discoveries, regardless of whether these findings alter the traditional image of Jesus. While we may never know the truth about whether Jesus married, there is one thing we can be certain of. The Church remains steadfast in its position that Jesus was celibate and never married. This viewpoint has become a lively point of debate and an integral part of the history of Christian doctrine. While many modern believers see Jesus' celibacy as a central tenet of the Christian faith, the historical reality is much more complex. It is widely accepted that the concept of Jesus' celibacy was truly established in the 4th century, when the Church sought to create a distinct identity for its faith and separate itself from pagan religions. At this time, as Christianity was growing rapidly and becoming influential in society, Church leaders saw that one of the ways to distinguish themselves from pagan religions was by emphasizing the purity and superior morality of Jesus. Beyond the theological factor, the promotion of Jesus' celibacy also had practical elements within the Church itself. At this time, the Church was increasingly becoming institutionalized and hierarchical, with a growing number of priests and bishops. The major concern at the time was that if priests and bishops married and had children, they could pass on wealth and power to their families. By promoting celibacy, the Church could prevent clergy from becoming heirs to property, thus preserving the concentration of power within the Church without being divided by generational inheritance. However, not all Christian communities accepted this view from the start. Some early Christian groups, especially the Gnostics, believed that Jesus had married. These communities had differing views, as reflected in texts such as the Gospel of Philip and the Coptic papyrus fragments which describe the intimate relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. This diversity of perspectives reflects a historical reality that, in the early days of Christianity, there was no consensus on the personal life of Jesus. It is also important to note that the Church's promotion of Jesus' celibacy was not just a matter of historical interpretation, but also had practical consequences for the structure and functioning of the Church. The imposition of celibacy on clergy led to serious issues, including sexual misconduct, abuse, and a shortage of priests. The prohibition and strictness in maintaining sexual purity created a culture of embarrassment and oppression in Christian societies. This can be seen in the Church's prohibition of premarital sexual activity, as well as its restrictions on sexuality in Christian teachings. The stigma against non-heterosexual orientations and non-reproductive sexual acts also reflects a society where control over sexuality and family relationships became an inseparable part of religious norms. All of these factors suggest that the idea of Jesus' celibacy was not just a theological concept, but also an institutional strategy to maintain power and define the identity of Christianity in the complex social and religious context of that time. When we reconsider all these factors, it becomes clear that the promotion of Jesus' celibacy was an important part of shaping Christian history and culture, but we also cannot overlook the significant questions about the true reasons behind the shift in the perception of his personal life. In recent years, a growing movement within the Church has begun to question the role of celibacy in Christian faith. Some within the Church argue that emphasizing celibacy has contributed to the creation of a secretive, opaque, and even deceitful culture. They argue that a more open and honest approach to sexuality, one that aligns better with the teachings and messages of Jesus, could be the key to building a healthier and more transparent Christian community. These individuals believe that accepting emotional relationships, including marriage, would make the teachings of Jesus more relatable and understandable rather than creating unattainable ideals. So what do you think? Could Jesus have married Mary Magdalene? Or is this just an intriguing theory that will forever remain an unsolved mystery? While we may never have a definitive answer, questioning and exploring different possibilities is undoubtedly an important part of the journey in understanding Jesus and his teachings. The decision about whether Jesus was married and whether that changes how we understand him is ultimately up to you. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring intriguing questions and unsolved mysteries in upcoming videos. Lord, grant us wisdom and peace in our search for truth. Help us understand your teachings more clearly and live according to the love you have shown. Please guide us in all our thoughts and actions so that we may always live worthy of your love and blessings. Amen.